Yay, that's the fun drawing for today. Makes no sense later. The thing on the right looks like those balloon things at car dealerships. Just, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter, and apparently the world is burning down around us. So, yay. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall. If you are wondering who we are to be talking about these pros, Cassie and I both have extensive experience in both partner and solo dancing. She has about 21 years, I have about 23, and we're not here to be judging anyone. We're really just here to look at what is happening between two people who really try to keep it science-based.
And tonight's topic is rolling through the feet. I have a few soapboxy things to share with you all. Rolling through the feet means different things in different situations. And one of the things that frustrates me is I feel like the way it's taught conventionally is not the whole truth. And people tend to just leave it there a lot. And so we want to kind of like bust some myths and talk about the nuances this evening. One of the things that personally I feel like gets left a lot out of the conversation with rolling through your feet is that foot articulation needs to affect the rest of the body. And I feel like it's really common when you're practicing and first learning how to roll through your feet that it is a disembodied motion. It's just like, put on your feet. That's not helpful. And then another thing to consider is the directional intent of your weight and your center. Is your intent down into the floor? Are you trying to ground yourself while you roll through your feet? Or are you intending to travel across the floor, in which case how you roll through your feet will be different because you're trying to travel. And then we're probably also going to talk a little bit about why lifting your knees like a horse is bad in some situations, but can be appropriate in others. Because nuance, people, the power to choose your own dance. So we've got two videos to share with you tonight. The first video we're watching tonight is Ben McHenry and Jennifer DeLuca from Bridgetown Swing 2017. Go ahead and give it a watch. To the screen share. So this first section I wanted to talk about was these Elvis knees from Ben, because rolling through the feet, it also depends on what direction you're rolling. So there isn't just from toe to heel or from heel to toe. You can also roll side to side. So he's rolling in with his right foot, and then he's switching and rolling in with his left foot. And so he's technically rolling through his feet to create that motion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to highlight that.
Yeah. And, there are other like slight variations on how you could do those, but just the way that he's choosing to do those is, it's different. Like, I don't see a lot of that side to side roll through.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk about Jen's kickball change into this pattern. So she kicks with her right foot and then brings the toe back towards herself because her center isn't caught up enough to have placed it out here. So she brings it back under herself and rolls through her foot, toe to heel with a pivot.
Mm-hmm. And
one of the things about foot articulation, and I know there's one particular instance in the next video we're going to talk about tonight, but the follow through of the motion. So you can see right here, she has a relaxed ankle, and then she goes into a gentle point of the foot for the kick. It's not over articulated, but it is pointed slightly.
Mm-hmm.
And then she maintains that point, and then she cushions through her toes. So you can see the break at the ball of the foot between the toes and the rest of the foot. And then controls the lowering of her heel and doesn't let it touch all the way down. That's how she's able to pivot it.
Mm-hmm.
To pivot on it. English is hard today. But it's that range of motion and articulating the whole foot and then having it affect the body. That's one of the things that we dance teachers are trying to convey to our students when we say roll through your feet.
Mm-hmm.
It means full articulation in the range of motion.
Right. So, like we mentioned earlier briefly, we were saying that, a lot of times you will hear instructors talk about picking up the knees rather than releasing the foot. And there, for the most part, it should be more releasing of the foot than picking up the knee. However, there are times that picking up the knee is something that is useful and necessary. But this one right here, so Jen, you can see is kind of picking up her knees, and you can really see that she's picking them up because as she's lifting, the knee is going up rather than more out. And you can see as well, so the reason that, you don't want to have that up as your like base rolling through the foot is because it brings the body upward, right? And you can really see here, she's really like using that to accentuate what she's doing. So you can really see that upward movement. But like in general, we want to be more grounded. So lifting the knee rather than releasing the foot or the leg, it's kind of doing the opposite of what we want the majority of the time. However, right here, she's styling a little bit differently. And so obviously lifting that knee is giving a different look, and that's what she's going for here.
Yep. And just to add to what Alicia said, the difference between that up and the down is where you're sending your weight. Mm-hmm. And to be grounded, you need to be sending your weight down into the floor. But when you end up picking up your knees and the emphasis is on the picking up, you're actually pulling your weight away from the floor and making yourself less grounded.
Yeah.
And Jen actually does something really sneaky here where she kind of counters the lift of the knee by lowering her standing heel to help stabilize herself. And when we say to release a foot instead of picking it up, a release happens if you are grounding properly into your standing leg. If you ground your weight down into the floor through your standing leg, that will take the weight off of your free foot, thereby releasing it so it can then move. Mm-hmm. So that's the distinction that we're making between picking up versus releasing a free foot.
Right. Picking up is more when you want to bring the foot all the way off the floor. Usually if you're doing a release, it's going to very minimally come off the floor or, stay kind of in a graze on the floor.
Yep.
We're looking at Jen here. And what we're looking at is the slight roll through that she has of her feet when she's going through these turns here. So you can kind of see that as she is traveling, she's kind of softening the blow by like that heel just comes down ever so slightly. She's not placing it all the way down. But you can kind of also see that she's having a little bit of side to side roll as well. Very minimal, but right there you can see she's placing the inside of the foot and then rolling onto it.
Yeah, having lateral strength in your ankles to be able to do a delayed roll and weight transfer laterally across the ball of your foot is a really important technique to build into your dancing.
Erin said, how would someone balance that without getting pigeon-toed?
So the reason she gets pigeon-toed in this position is because she doesn't release this heel soon enough. Mm-hmm. So if we go back as she's stepping onto that foot, she picks up the heel, but she's not swinging it inward and rotating her left toe out to the left. She's not bringing it through soon enough. That's something that actually requires a fair amount of like muscle strength, I would say. It's one of the few things that I would actually argue requires really building up a lot of strength,
Mhm.
is that ability to release the heel soon enough while your weight is transferring over it. And it's because she's reaching into this side position here and
Mhm.
not pivoting into it on her left foot that's creating the pigeon toe
Right.
effect. I am sneaky because I am a little bit weak. So what I do instead of trying to pivot is I take a step straight forward, and I would be in like fifth position here facing that direction. And then when I'm split weight, fifth position, I would then use both legs to pivot myself to the left. It's very sneaky. Highly recommend if you've never tried it.
What you're seeing is she has a slight pitch forward when she's coming into that end of the slot. So in this position, because of the way that she would be straightening her legs, she does need to actually use the knees to pick up rather than releasing the foot, because she's not really weighted on either foot fully. And she's not trying to transfer to one foot or the other fully. She's kind of keeping it somewhere in the middle. And if she wasn't necessarily picking up her knees here, you would probably see the foot just kind of slide more forward.
Yeah, so her right foot right here
Mm-hmm.
would just slide that way. And she loves doing footwork so much. I think that's one of the reasons why she tends to be a little bit lighter on her feet. She wants to
Yeah.
have the freedom to do a lot of footwork
Mm-hmm.
at a moment's notice, which requires having your heels easily released from the floor. Also, this is just excellent slow motion, so I'm gonna frame through real quick. Ta-da!
So looking at Jen again right here, we're looking at another spot where she's lifting the knee, and that's helpful for her. So because of she's a little bit pitched back here, or she's wanting to pitch a little bit further back, she's wanting to hang back a little bit more rather than come forward really easily. And so she's kind of having that leg lift up to balance her, to help her hang back a little bit more. And that way she has a very free foot to kind of extend forward without like having to put any weight on it. And so that's helping delay everything. Yeah, I think it was just right in here.
Okay.
Where you're saying like she really doesn't have a lot of foot roll happening as she's stepping right here. It's more being placed flat.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than having like a really good roll through, which is partially because of the angle she's at and partially because of where she's weighted. So because she's bringing that foot inward and she's kind of not totally weighted back, like she's not reaching and then shifting for that. She's kind of like her hips are kind of moving as she's headed that way into that step. And so that doesn't allow quite as much time to have that roll through. And, you know, it's fine for where she's at. Like it doesn't affect anything. It's probably, it would have been a little bit more awkward for her to have a more full roll through of that foot because of how underneath herself she was stepping.
Right. And this actually brings me to there are another two different ways to think about rolling through the feet. One is striking with the toe, being broke at the ankle, then letting the ball of the foot and then the heel. That's one way to think about rolling through the foot, going through this range of motion. But another way to think about it is your foot flat on the ground out in front of you, and your center's here, and your foot stays on the ground, but your center moves over top of it until you have to then pick it up to keep moving forward. So if your center is traveling consistently over top of a flat foot to travel, and that works in any direction, heel to toe, toe to heel, side to side, corner to corner, that is also a way of thinking about rolling through your feet. It's not only the foot articulation.
Right.
And so when you're learning about this stuff and you're practicing and you're learning from teachers, it could be helpful to ask which one that they're talking about at any given time. All right, I wanted to talk about Ben's shuffle right here, because he is combining rolling through the foot toe to heel on his left with a heel to toe on his right. And it's just a nice combination. It creates a really nice lilting effect.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can not only use rolling through your feet as, technique to help you have more control, but you can mess with the combinations of it to create footwork, which, ultimately this is an episode about footwork, just a very particular perspective to look at footwork with.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I love Jen's saunter through that. It's just so
I was just looking at that, thinking the same thing, but then I also saw what Ben Morris was doing in the background, like as she's doing that.
Jazz hands.
Yeah. Not sure why. Anyways. But the other thing I wanted to add to that was he's using that combination because he's wanting to really soften that foot that's going underneath him, but then he's reaching with that other foot. So the foot that's going heel to toe, because he's reaching with it, that's why he has those two different rolls.
Yep.
Which you can reach and use a toe as well. But a lot of times, unless you're pitched more forward, it's going to end up being a more heel lead.
Yeah, and the timing would be different.
Mm-hmm.
So like he's, by reaching with that heel, he's creating like a more emphasis on the down.
Yeah.
Which is a thing we do in swing. And he's cushioning it with that toe lead of his left foot underneath himself, but he's using that heel to create a pulse to the rhythm.
We're looking at Jen right here, and what we're looking at is that replacement of the foot that she's doing right underneath herself. And so as she's traveling, you can see that there is that toe to heel roll. But then once she kind of comes to a stop, it doesn't quite look like she's rolling underneath herself. It looks like she's placing with a flat foot. And that's not entirely what's happening. It's just because her foot is right underneath her, so there's not a lot of lift off the ground at that point. And in comparison to what was happening when she was traveling, it looks a lot less like a roll of the foot.
Yeah, so what I see, especially with this right foot, as she's dragging it through, it comes flat, but then she articulates it into a point for a kickball change.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's still having a range of motion from flexed to pointed, because that's really ultimately what we're talking about, is going from flexed to pointed in the ankle. That's ultimately what we're talking about. And she still does this. So even though she brushes through a flat foot, she immediately articulates it into a point on the other end, which means she has that foot articulation.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is for both of them. And we're just looking at how both of them are not completely rolling through the foot as they're traveling. And Ben does a little bit, but for the most part, neither of them are like going through this whole thing with a, fully placed foot on the ground. And they really need that because they're traveling so much. They need the extra bounce to be able to move and to kind of redirect, I guess, that momentum from kind of going down to out.
Yeah, because they're creating so much drive down the slot to continue traveling. They need to stay light on their feet in order to make that happen. And then they transition to fully completed foot rolls in order to slow their momentum. I wanted to point out Jen's gliding through here because it's just so great. And gliding is a fancy manipulation of rolling through the feet by creating the illusion of that your weight is where it's not. That's basically what gliding is. So right there, she brought her left foot underneath her to take the weight and did the weight transfer so subtly that it looks like, illusion wise, that her weight is still on her right foot and she's floating to her right, but it's not. There wasn't weight on her right foot until that moment when she brings in her left foot again. We should frame through a classic Michael Jackson moonwalk at some point, because why not?
I'm sure there are plenty of them.
I know.
Yeah, on this, just really watching where the hips are at is really important to see like where the weight is.
Yeah, so right here, her weight's on her left foot. Right here, her weight's on her right foot. And then it switched.
Ben's little travel through the releve that he does here. It's an interesting one to look at. He places the foot, that left foot behind him, and he's not really rolling through it at all. So the whole time he just has that like base of the toes on the ground. He's not rolling through. Once he gets back further, he's putting that weight back on the right foot and lowering the heel of the left, but it's not like rolling through it.
And this is one of those interesting things where it can feel like splitting hairs, because like he's still articulating the foot in a way that impacts the rest of his body, which is also part of the point of rolling through your feet. So he's just bypassing the heel, and he's still letting the mechanics of rolling through your foot affect the rest of his body. He's just not letting the heel drop. He's staying in a relevant position as he does that.
And he's really using that releve to give him space to move through it without having his heels like on the ground.
You sound very far away again all of a sudden.
That's nice. I didn't do anything.
Of course. So similarly through this section, Ben is doing some quick just toe, toe, toe steps and not lowering his heels. But he's still absorbing that shock through the rest of his body, even though he's going up on releve, and looking quite surprised as he does it. It's a good face. But you can see the intent of the motion is still there. So if we watch his left foot right here, the toe meets the floor first. He breaks at the ball of his foot to absorb into the ball of his foot. And then his heel does lower slightly as his leg straightens. But then he doesn't let the heel go any further and then lets that straightening motion push him up off the floor. And so there's still the kind of mechanic of rolling through your feet and how that affects the rest of your body. It's just that he purposefully did not actually let his heel touch the ground in that moment to create a certain effect. The second video we're watching tonight is Kyle Red and Cameo McHenry from Boogie by the Bay. Go ahead and give it a watch. It's a fun romp. Let us know when you're back, and hopefully we'll be able to hear Alicia. Back to the screen share. Excellent. All right.
Can you hear me better now?
I can. Let's
Great.
hope it sticks. Let's nerd out about Kyle's 1 and 2 right here. It's so good. So earlier we were talking about this distinction between releasing a foot and picking it up. So right here is a really good example of Kyle placing his left foot on one, grounding into it, and then that grounding is what releases his right foot. And then he brings it underneath himself with a very bent leg in order to have an extreme difference between just his toe touching the floor right here and then rolling all the way through it to his heel. Mm-hmm. And that's something that Kyle is excellent at, and is one of the reasons why he wears the white shoes, because it shows off his beautiful footwork and how he rolls through his feet.
So let's see. So yeah, so here we're looking at her like using the knees to lift, and it's because of the way that she is, like when she moves back a little bit, she is squatting into things, right? So she's grounding herself more. So then here she can't really just release the foot to do anything. Like she can, but because she's trying to triple, she needs to use the knee a little bit more to bring the foot up. And the other thing with it is that because of the way that she's pitched quite far back at the very beginning, she is not necessarily releasing, but she's kind of brushing with the foot. And so that's one of those moments where like it would be necessary to lift the knee rather than to release it because of the way that she's pitched back, if she wasn't doing what she did, which was kicking it forward, brushing it forward.
Yep.
And that's partly because the way that she's pitched, her legs are kind of locked. Like, you know, knees locking, it's kind of like that. It's not totally, but when you get into a very straight leg position like that, it will most likely need more of a knee lift than a release of the foot.
Mm-hmm. All right, I wanted to talk about Kyle's anchor here, because he starts with a little bit of a pigeon-toed heel strike right here, so he can rotate on that heel as he hooks behind. And then he also rolls through that foot that he hooks behind in an interesting way. So this is in a situation where, yes, he's grounded into that left foot, but because he wants a lot of contrast into that heel strike, he released the foot, but he then also picks it up in addition. So that way this moment has more contrast because his foot was so high before. It creates that contrast. And then right here, his left foot comes back and behind, and it's beveled. So he's not only on the toe, but he's on the outside edge of the toe. And he rolls not only towards the heel, but also across the foot from the side of it. So that just goes back to what I was talking about in the introduction of tonight's episode, is that direction matters, and whether or not you're traveling matters. And it's not always as simple as just toe to heel, toe to heel, toe to heel. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish, both in the physics of the dance and also with what aesthetic you're trying to have. Oh, yeah. Oh, I can translate this note. This one makes sense to me. Okay. So Kyle is driving Cameo forward very strongly. So like she's ready to do a toe lead, but because Kyle is encouraging her to take a larger stride, it becomes a strong heel lead. So being able to have the capacity to change up how you're articulating your feet is really important in West Coast swing because things change so instantaneously all the time. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about right here. Kyle does a really excellent skip. He does this skip, which he has a micro rolling through his feet right here, which I appreciate. But what I wanted to talk about is how he's pitching back right here to create a really strong delayed weight transfer into this heel lead onto his left foot. And you can see how strongly he's pitched back to delay that weight transfer. And then I really appreciate how he drags in the toe across the floor as he's doing that. And then he rolls into that foot when he's ready to actually ground it down into the floor. So it's a really simple sequence of footwork. But because he's just really clearly articulating through his feet and letting them affect his body, ends up looking really nice.
Hello. You're probably wondering, Cassie, why are you suddenly in your office? Well, let me tell you, Alicia's mic never came back on. We ended up ending the episode a little early. We're really sorry about that. We are troubleshooting the issue, and hopefully all will be well next week for our episode on one-footed spins. But we're really happy with what we were able to accomplish this week up until her mic decided to die. Thank you for joining us this week. As always, let us know in the comments if there is a topic you want us to approach in the future, or if you ever have comments about the existing episode. We are happy to answer questions. Subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you're notified every Sunday at 12 p.m. Pacific when we post a video. And also check out our Patreon, where we do some extra special training and nerdiness about West Coast swing. We'll be back next week. Talk to you then. Bye.
I guess I should have my notes out now. That would make sense.
Yeah,
my head is only partially screwed on this evening, people, so please be patient with me. I told you I was tired. I'm going to be spitting out the wrong words all night. It's going to be great.
What I was framing through, I don't know what they did, but they did something where like everyone on the follow side was like cracking up in the background, and Tessa's just like,
One of these days I should get one of those like twinkly sound effects for when I transition. But yeah, do you see what I'm talking about with Delancey? Face is great. She's like,
Erin said, it's the ultimate judge face.
all right. Basically everything she does is fierce. It's a judge face, but it's like on fire at the same time. We need to invite a lip reader on for when this happens. He grounds into that left foot, which releases the right. Oh, and the echo's back.
We're just having a lot of problems tonight.
Wow. I can try to predict what you wanted to talk about. That might be fun. All right. I get to try to be Alicia tonight. That is a tall order. Okay. Wish me luck, everyone. This is my final Jeopardy.
Alicia looks so pissed right
I would be so
In
deeply
her
frustrated.
head, I can think I should be saying something right now, but this
She's
thing
got
hates
witty
me.
comebacks for everything. And she's like, this sucks, you guys. I hate you all.
I mean, if you have anything mean to say about any of us, you can get it out now. We won't hear it.
Alicia, there was a moment when you got super close to the computer like this, and I was like, the ASMR is starting. They all do it. They're like, okay, guys, today we're gonna be folding some napkins.
Oh my.
Here's a bowl.
So peaceful.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you for joining us as the world burns down around us.